We'll start with LR428, introduced by Senator Dubas to examine issues related to beekeeping and honey production and marketing.
My name's Warren Nelson, W-A-R-R-E-N-N-E-L-S-O-N. Give you just a little bit of a background on me. I was born in Omaha, raised in Bellevue. I've lived in Elm Creek, Sydney, and now Lincoln. So I've been all across this beautiful state, and I love every part of it. What got me into beekeeping, I was transferred into Lincoln in 1991. 1992, I took a class at the University of Nebraska on beekeeping, and started out as a hobby, and now it's gotten out of control and it's a business. I bought a honey bottling company in 2000, and we distribute in the Omaha and Lincoln area. My wife and I are the two sole employees. I'm a past member of the National Honey Board's Nominations Committee. I was the Nebraska representative for 4 years with that, and I retired from the Nebraska State Patrol on October 6th of 2008. So, been serving the state for a long time now, full-time beekeeper and a honey packer as well. The honey standard is very important to everyone, but it's especially important to the beekeepers that are trying to make a living on honey. You know, they're producing the honey, they're selling it to either the large packers or they're doing the bottling themselves. And there's been many that have blended high fructose corn syrup, you know, to make things that they call sugar-free honey. There's imitation honey out there on the shelves, and when you see these things, it's confusing the customers. The customers will come around. I'll get calls all the time. You know, do you have sugar-free honey? Absolutely not. There's no way. I have pure Nebraska honey, that's it. Well, do you have any of the imitation honey? No, I don't. We don't play around with anything like that. It's all natural honey. What you need to look at with the different products that are out there is, like you were looking for the ingredient label on your bottle of water there. Generally, if it has honey in the name, it's going to be way down on the list of ingredients, or it may not even be in the recipe at all. Yeah, just misleading. They have something that gives it a honey flavor, and there's absolutely no honey in there. And that hurts our industry because people think that is, you know, they're using the pure stuff. 20 years ago, the Chinese didn't make a dent in the worldwide honey market. 10 years later, they are the leading worldwide producer. You know, there have been imports coming into the United States, you know, from China, and also in a roundabout way, there is an anti-dumping tariff that is put on honey that comes from China because it is so cheap. And as Keith mentioned, they're circumventing that by shipping it to other countries, relabeling it, and sending it back in. But just a few years ago, there was a study done, and over 60% of the honey sold in the United States was from China, which really, really takes a bite out of the U.S. honey production. And it also cheapens the price and makes it very difficult for the honey producer in the state of Nebraska or anywhere in the United States to be able to make a living off of it. The Chinese honey, as Senator Dubas had mentioned earlier, has been tainted with antibiotics. And the antibiotics that are in there is a last-ditch effort antibiotic when, and I don't know the name of it, it's one of those long multi-consonant spelled names, but it's a last-ditch effort. When all other antibiotics that are prescribed for you do not work, this is the last-ditch effort, so it's a really strong one, and you would be getting a small dose of that every time you're having any of this Chinese honey. The problem with the undercut prices that they have, like I said, makes it very difficult for people like me to compete against those. And there are people, not just the very large packers, but some small regional type packers that are also using this imported honey and undercutting us and making it very difficult. The thing that I'm blessed with is that we started long enough ago. We have enough people that are wanting local honey, and they see our name on there. They've become very familiar with our company. They know that we have only Nebraska honey, and we have developed a following, and we do very well. We have, every year, we bottle and distribute about 40,000 pounds of honey, 40 to 50,000 pounds of honey out of Lincoln. So we're growing, we're continuing to grow, and that's what we're looking forward to. The testing and the equipment to verify that honey is really pure honey, is available, and the test is very simple. I encourage you to pass this legislation and the Codex standard.
Thank you for your testimony. Questions, Senator Price?
Yes, thank you very much, sir. Mr. Nelson, in listening to what you said, that if you have a brood box and a super, right? I mean,
Yes.
what is or do you have an industry standard for our region for the yield in a year on a box?
It's just like farming. It
But
just
there's
depends
a
on the
spectrum.
weather. One year you may, be very fortunate and get 100 pounds per hive. The next year you may be fortunate to get 40 pounds a hive. It just depends on the crops that are out there and how they do and what the weather factor is.
So then looking at that and pricing, what is your spectrum on pricing? When we talk about beans and we talk about corn, we have a spectrum we look at.
There's I don't want to say a national standard, but there's kind of regional prices
Right.
That go with the different regions within the United States. And what we look at is just what that average is and try to go with that. As far as the pricing, what we do on the shelf, what we sell to the retail outlets, we have to figure in our cost of operations and that kind of thing. So, if you're looking at just coming out of the hive, getting ready to pack, whatever that average is for our region is what we use.
What is that today?
Today, it ranges anywhere from about $1.60 to $1.75 per pound, and we usually try to stay right in the middle of that because you have some areas obviously that are more populous than Nebraska, and so their prices end up being a little bit higher, and so we try to find a mid-range to go in.
Thank you.
Okay.
Any other questions? Senator Shields?
Thank you, Senator Carlson. Thanks for coming in today. Being a packer, you said the test is relatively simple. Do you guys routinely test samples that are
We don't. I don't have the equipment to do that.
What would, if this is put into place to protect yourself,
Mhm.
would you have to start doing that?
If that would be the way the legislation is set up, then yes.
Well, and I don't foresee, and maybe I'm wrong, I don't foresee us putting that in there. Or maybe you need to, but I hope not. But the only question that I have is then, as soon as you have a standard, then you have to make sure that everything that you're putting into your product matches up to that. Otherwise,
Right.
you open yourself up for liability as well, correct?
That's correct.
How much does the test
and
cost?
what? Excuse me.
No, you're fine. You go ahead.
Oh, I know that what I produce is nothing but pure honey.
Absolutely, right.
And so, for me to invest in equipment and do a test on myself wouldn't make a lot of sense. However, if somebody suspected that I was doing something like that, then as Keith mentioned, I can, take it to the university and we can get the test done there.
Sure. So you're not buying honey from anybody else?
I am buying honey from other small producers in Nebraska. I've known these people for 18 years. Some of them I've known longer, before I was even in beekeeping, and know how they operate, and they're very trustworthy.
Sure.
And having a law enforcement background makes me skeptical of a lot of people. So.
Well, and once again, I just want to make sure that we're protecting our producers.
Yes.
So that we don't have people that can just stand up and say, hey, I don't think yours is pure, and then make you jump through a bunch of hoops to prove that everything's okay.
Right.
So, anyway, thank you so much.
Any other questions? Senator Dubas?
Thank you, Senator Carlson. Thank you, Mr. Nelson, for being here. I appreciate your input. Where does Nebraska rank as far as honey production?
Nebraska is in the top 20 states.
Has that gone up, down? Have we stayed kind of?
We've stayed pretty much the same the last 10 years in the same position, in the same ranking. At one time it was higher, but it has dropped down. So at one time we were in the top 10, now we're in the top 20.
Are we having any issues with colony collapse in Nebraska?
Nothing that has been verified.
That's good. Anything close around us?
every state around us. Yeah, how we've managed to remain isolated, I'm not sure, but been very fortunate.
Good, that's good. How difficult is it to adulterate honey?
It really isn't. You know, of honey, you can transfer half of that barrel into another barrel. You can fill the rest with high fructose corn syrup. You have a blender that's going to mix it together, and you put it into the tank and bottle it.
Are there any other types of additives that are used to adulterate honey?
There may be. That is the main one, just because it's very cheap. You know, they can lower the price that way and make it much more affordable to the consumer. As long as there's no standard, they can just put a pure honey label on there, and people don't know the difference.
Other than cost, is there any other reason to adulterate honey?
No. You know, really, there's not a reason to adulterate it. You know, there are some unscrupulous people that will do what they can to better the bottom line.
Now, Keith mentioned Sous Vide honey, and is that the major packer in our particular area?
They're a major, well, they're all across the United States, but they started up in Sioux City. There's also Golden Heritage down in Kansas. There's a couple of others that the names slip my mind right now, but you know, with regional and national packers, those are kind of the biggest ones. There are a lot of beekeepers in Nebraska, I shouldn't say a lot of, but many of the commercial beekeepers that do this for a living do sell their honey to either Golden Heritage or to Sous Vide, because that's all they want to do is just produce the honey and get rid of it. They're not into packaging it.
But you as producers aren't feeling like you have any issues with either one of those packers?
No, I just have an issue with them using foreign honey.
Okay. I have another question that just slipped my mind.
It's good to see it happens to you, too.
I guess hopefully it'll come back to
While
me
you're
to
thinking,
answer.
just one more thing. We do have a health department certified kitchen in Lincoln, and when we built it, we contacted the health department. We asked them what we needed to do to meet their criteria, and we built it around their criteria so that you know, we're not circumventing any of the rules.
I remember my question. Thank you. As I've talked to some honey producers in other states, they've given me very specific. They've had real issues with a specific packer doing the types of adulteration that we're talking about. I'm not hearing that coming from Nebraska producers. So for us to adopt this standard is not necessarily because Nebraska producers are having this issue. You're looking at this as a nationwide issue, and you want to join in unity with your fellow producers across the nation to try to protect your industry,
Yes.
support your industry.
Yes, and it would also be to prevent anybody from coming into Nebraska to start doing that. So if you know, the laws are on the book, you know, then this puts a stop to it before it gets started.
Now, when I visited with the producer in Florida, she talked about the adoption of that standard with deviations. And I understand those deviations were specific to the types of honey that's produced in that state. Is that correct?
I believe so.
And so if we adopted something in Nebraska, we could put deviations into our standard relative to the types of honey that you produce here in the state.
Yes.
And there are, even though we think of honey as honey, depending on the type of flower or plant that nectar is derived from, causes different flavors to the honey. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Or even in the look of it, the color?
Yes, in the color as well.
Okay. Okay, that's it. Thank you.
Any other questions? Senator Price.
Thank you, Senator Carlson. Just jog some questions like numbers. Okay, so we heard earlier that about approximately 70% of our honey is exported. Is that honey exported as individual bottles or to packers out of the state?
It is sent out in barrels to the packers, such as Golden Heritage in Kansas or Sous Vide up in Sioux City.